Firstly, can you hear me okay at the back? Good, thank you. Welcome to the, sorry, can we call the meeting to order, please? Thanks. Welcome to the Woking Borough Council Planning Committee meeting. Before we start, a few quick housekeeping items. There's a public address system for those who are speaking on the committee and is only used by those who registered to speak, which is the microphone on the desk in front of me here. Please ensure your mobile phones are off or switched to silent and there's no fire drill planned. You'll see that this evening's committee meeting is being recorded. A video recording that will be available on the Council's website shortly after. How soon after the meeting?
2 days.
2 days after the meeting, right, okay. The cameras you'll see was only on members of the committee, and it will also record the input of those registered speakers. It doesn't view the audience specifically. Planning committee is made up of 9 elected members, borough councillors. We have 8 of those present tonight, one is on leave. And we're supported tonight by council professional officers who are here to advise us because we are lay people. On my far right is Mary Severin, who's the borough solicitor, who's here to give any legal advice that we require or to point us in the right direction if we're straying into dangerous territory. Next to her is Colm O'Carvenick, who's our new Democratic Services Officer for the Planning Committee. Next to him is Councillor Tim Holton, who's the Vice Chairman of the Committee. I'm Simon Weeks, I chair the committee. And on my left is Claire Lawrence, who's Head of Development Management. And next to her is Chris Easton, who's the Service Manager for Highway Development. And the planning officers will be presenting are sat over there and we'll take each item in turn. I think most of you are aware that the Planning Committee is quasi-judicial. We have set procedures and conduct and would ask you to cooperate with that. So after the presentations by the Planning Committee, Planning Officer, I'll call each of those who are registered to speak and ask you to use your allotted time. Members are interested in the quality of what you have to say rather than necessarily the quantity, so please don't feel obliged to use your full 3 minutes, but you're welcome to do so. And no other people who are allowed to address the committee on these items. Finally, just a reminder that the local planning authority's role is to determine planning applications when considered against local and national planning legislation and guidelines. It is not our role as a planning committee to propose alternatives to the planning applications we consider or to attempt to redesign them on the fly. And I think that's all I need to cover tonight. Obviously, the recommendations that are put before the council officers may be supported by the planning committee or may not be supported by the planning committee, dependent on the deliberations that we'll all be party to. So we'll move straight on then. Apologies, we just, I think, have Chris Singleton, who's on leave. Declarations of interest.
Yes, one declaration of interest and one advisory, really. Lord Harris Court, which is a Masonic retirement home there. I've been advised by our legal representative that I should declare a personal prejudicial interest in that, as I might possibly end up in there one day. Hopefully it's a bit in the distance, but you never know your luck. So I'll listen to the presentation and then leave.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing is G2 Engineering. I am the ward member for that area. So one of the few people, I have to say, that's kept the ward member involved all the way along with what they want to do. I haven't predetermined the application. I do think it's an important application that needs. The reason I listed it was because I think the committee need to debate the potential harm to the green belt and the economic benefits of the site. My co-councillor listed it for the opposite reason, but he said he hasn't visited the site and he did so at the request of Walgrave Parish Council, so he's open to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I'm sorry, I have the minutes. Sorry, I have the minutes in front of me. There are 2 minor suggested changes. Under other councillors present, I need to add Councillor Mark Ashwell, who was present, and under item 20, it should say set out in agenda pages 185. So, does anybody have any further additions or changes to the minutes? In that case, I shall sign them as a true copy. Right, and Claire, applications to be deferred or withdrawn?
Yes, Chairman, there are two items on the agenda to be deferred from this meeting. The first is item 30, Old Woking Road, deferred at the request of the applicant following officers identifying some quite significant inconsistencies between supporting information and the submitted plans. The second deferred item is the application for Elizabeth Road in Woking, and that's item number 35. And that's deferred to allow officers to identify some of the details on the scheme and to clarify those details to ensure they are acceptable.
Thank you, Claire. So just to confirm, so there's the avoidance of doubt, the first application we'll be considering is the reserved matters on Hyde End Road, Chinfield, followed by reserved matters on land north of Lane End Farm, Chinfield, followed by Lord Harris Court, followed by GTO, and finally with the household application for Frockhill Drive. So those are the applications that we're considering tonight. So without any further ado, we'll go straight on, and Chris Howard is the planning officer who's going to present the first item. Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm here to present the item for Shinfield West Phase 1A, which was a reserved matters application for 69 dwellings. The site is located within the South M4 SDL, and outline planning consent for the entire unit was approved in 2012 for 1,200 dwellings. The Phase 1A boundary is shown in the red area at the bottom of the development parcel. And the outline planning consent established several principles for the site, including access, the quantum of development and infrastructure requirements. The application is a reserved matters application for 69 dwellings, and the details under consideration are access roads within the site, layout, landscaping, scale and appearance. Since the approval of the Shinfield West planning application, there's been a lot of work done for some of the prior to submission of reserved matters conditions, and one of these requirements is for condition 5 is the requirement for an overarching design code for the site. This brings forward the key design principles for the entire site to ensure comprehensive development of delivery of development within the site, and it includes two main routes through the site. The main street, which runs broadly through the centre of the site, and a neighbourhood loop, which would link onto the main street, providing a circular loop throughout the site. Both of these areas have been incorporated in the master plan for the Phase 1A development. We'll see those a little bit later on. Looking at the site itself, the site is located to the west of Hyde End Road, and it's around 2.4 hectares of land. The existing land use is predominantly agricultural, and there is an area of woodland to the south-east of the site, which is Highland Hall Copse, and a line of trees to the south. All the significant vegetation within these areas will be retained. Looking at the site layout, the principal access to the site will be from Hyde End Road. The main street provides access to the west of the site and would link towards the western boundary to the other phases of the Shinfield West development parcels. The neighbourhood loop also provides access to the north side to the Phase 1B area, which is north of the development parcel there. The layout has been informed by the constraints of the site and incorporates existing landscape features, and is also being informed by the principles of the design code. The design code itself brings forward 3 character areas for the site, notable character areas for the site. One of the first of this is the main street. This has a similar style of dwellings in order to aid legibility through it, although there's variety within it. It is a principal route through the site and incorporates landscaping. The neighbourhood loop has a more informal layout with a variation to the building line and different building types. And the woodland edge has a more looser form of development, which is more sinuous to respond to the edges of the site and relationships of the existing landscaping features and countryside beyond. This area has lower density of development with predominantly detached units, or official detached units. Moving on to building heights, the taller units are shown here in dark blue, with a 2-storey building shown in a lighter blue. The heights of the buildings are in accordance with the plans for the outline planning consent, and the applicant has carefully used the taller units along the main street in order to aid legibility through the site. There are lower units at the edge of the site which respond well to the surrounding countryside, and in terms of density, the overall density is 32 dwellings per hectare, in line with core structural requirements and the outline planning consent. Moving on to some street scenes. Here at the top is the street scene of the main street, taken from the main street. Again, this is where the higher development has been located to emphasise this key route for the site. There's a use of a similar design style to make this a clear and legible route, although the applicant has carefully considered using detailing on the buildings to provide a bit of variety within the site itself. There are also different house types along this street to provide a degree of variety as well on key focal points. The other area highlighted is the internal street running through the centre of the site. This has been a more informal layout has been used for this part of the site, and the applicant has carefully considered design of building using render and detailed features on the houses to provide variety. Again, a mix of house types are being used here as well. With the woodland edge, there's a good range of house types again used in this area, and good spacing between the dwellings, which reflects the relationship between the edge of the site. On the neighbourhood loop, more of a range of unit types are being used here, and these are generally lower than on the main street, and a wide palette of materials provide diversity in appearance. In terms of landscaping, the site layout retains significant landscaping to the features of the south and the south-east and the south. The retention landscaping surrounding the site acts as a buffer to Hyde End Road and will instantly help soften development from the outset. Street trees have been incorporated into the main street, and there are more informal low-level planting and street trees to be planted within the other character areas. These are some of the perspectives taken from the site. This is the gateway entrance as you enter the site from Hyde End Road, and the applicant has carefully considered the design style of the houses here to provide a landmark gateway entrance feature. On this slide, the sort of tree barrier has been removed, but if we put the tree barrier that will be retained, it shows that instantly the houses will be screened from the trees, softening the impact of the built form from the outset. This is along the main street for the centre of the site, again showing the tall units and the incorporation of landscaping. And it also shows the regular building line along the street in order to sort of provide a good street hierarchy. This is a view of the dwellings from the woodland edge, showing the looser form of development and different house types used along here. And this is a view of the top of the main street looking from north to south, showing the landscaping that's been incorporated. In terms of internal space standards, this slide shows typical floor plans for 2, 3 and 4 bed units. All houses have been designed to meet the thresholds outlined within the MDD for internal space standards, and they are all compliant with these. This ensures that there's sufficient space for the future occupants of the dwellings. Similarly with garden depths, the applicant has carefully considered to ensure that all garden depths of the houses are in accordance with the 11 metre threshold set out in the Borough Design Guide. The widths of the gardens also helps ensure that there's sufficient amenity space for the future occupants of the dwelling. Moving on to parking, this is part of the parking plan that's put forward. The application proposes 247 parking spaces, 21 of which are visitor bays. The visitor bays are shown in the darker blue. This equates to around 3.14 spaces per dwelling, which exceeds our borough standards. The car parking is considered rated well to the dwellings it's intended to serve, and the visitor spaces are well distributed throughout the site. Car parking is also provided in large garages, or where the garages aren't the 7 metres depth, they are provided in sheds. Moving on to recommendation. The recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions set out in the report and those in the members' update. Just a couple of items on the members' update. Full composite set of plans for the avoidance of doubt, so they should supersede the ones on the committee reports. There's a couple of additional landscaping conditions as requested by the landscape architect. And there is an amendment to condition 10 wording on page 4. This is a point of implementation, so that instead of saying no development shall commence, development of dwellings hereby condition not commence until the surface water basin has been committed and completed. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Now we have Nick Patterson-Neil registered to speak. Good evening. If you press the grey button, if the light comes on, you should be able to hear.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members. My name is Nick Patterson-Neil, Town Planning Director at Barton Wilmore. I speak this evening on behalf of the applicants. That's the University of Reading, Moor Homes, Linden Homes and Bogus Homes. Now, as members will recall, and Mr Howard has already indicated, Outline Planning Permission was granted for Shinfield West back in 2012, 1,200 dwellings, a local centre and a primary school. Therefore, the principle of development at Shinfield West is already established, both as a result of the core strategy, SDL allocation, the guidance within the South of M4 SPD, and of course through the grant of the Planning Commission itself. And therefore, the application before you tonight is the first in what will be a sequence of reserve matters applications for residential development. As you've heard, the development is 69 dwellings. That's a mixture of 2 and 2.5 stories in height, density of 32 dwellings to the hectare, which is a low density and very much appropriate for this part of the site. The proposal includes a range of 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom properties, including 12 affordable homes, as required by the existing Section 106 agreement. The layout provides for parking spaces at an average in excess of 3 per dwelling, and as you've heard, the majority on plot, with 21 visitor spaces, and they've been distributed carefully following discussions with officers and evenly throughout the development. And therefore, this fully accords with the Council's parking standards. The application is supported by a design statement which explains the design principles of the development, and this is consistent both with the outline permission parameters, the design access statement accompanying the outline permission, and the subsequently approved design code which Mr Howard referred to. Phase 1A, as you've heard again, at the risk of repeating Mr Howard, there are 3 character areas as you've seen on the slides. The main street, which forms the entrance of the site from the south and will lead up in due course to the avenue through the centre of the site northwards. Secondly, the woodland edge, typified by more informal arrangements of larger properties in a more traditional style linked by lanes and private drives. And thirdly, the first section of what will become a neighbourhood loop, which is a more low-key route which will link and connect the individual neighbourhoods as the development progresses as a whole. And this is an important street linking this phase with future phases of the development. The key principles of this loop are being provided to provide more informal character, with variety and enclosure expressed through different building forms. And it has an irregular building line with variation in setbacks and gaps between buildings to provide a more continuous sense of frontage and enclosure. And really, just to conclude, members, this development proposed is very much, as of course you'll appreciate, an important step in the delivery of new homes at Shinfield. Itself, of course, a central part of the Council's core strategy, led, of course, by the SDLs. And I fully support the recommendation made by your officers in favour of the application, and I and representatives of the developers are here tonight should members have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Right, members, I think the majority of the members of the planning committee actually visited this site some significant periods ago, and as you know, this was a site that was eventually approved on appeal at the outline stage in November 2012. You'll see, members, that there are no objections from local ward members, there are no objections from the public, and that there's the support of Shinfield Parish Council. The parking standards, as we've heard, exceed our requirements, and you'll also have noticed from the report that amenity space and internal space standards are also met. So it's an application that is a long way down the process. So who would like to speak on this? We don't have a board member. Michelle?
I do have a question. There's an alleyway going off of Neighborhood Loop to three flats or something like this at the end. So they have parking spaces behind that are not connected to a road in any way, shape, or form. I was wondering if they were planning on flying there, or you see, you go down Neighborhood Loop, the very end of that at Neighborhood Loop, you see an alleyway. Now you see that place right there? There are 2 spaces behind there, but it's not connected to a road in any way, shape, or form.
No, they're drive-through.
Underneath.
Underneath the building, okay. It's just, it's
Yeah.
through the lounge,
It's a
through
good
the lounge,
question.
you know, it looks like it's sort of a helicopter landing pad or something like this.
All right, don't give them
Microphone.
you turn the mic off, Lisa? Just a couple of questions. Obviously, there are 3 developers involved, and there are 3 distinct areas within these dwellings. There's the main street, the Woodland Edge, and the neighbourhood loop. Are each of Bloor, Linden, and Bovis doing one of those? Can you answer that question, please?
The development, the main street area will be Linden Homes.
Right.
There's an area for Bloor Homes which is on the eastern side, close to the woodland.
Right.
And Bovis Homes have an area centred around the neighbourhood loop. The first section of the neighbourhood is at the northern end.
Right. My concern was simply one of individual street scenes. If you've got inevitably 2 different developers building in one street, there's a potential for slight differences in style and finish. And I was just wondering how you were going to avoid that.
Well, we've worked very carefully and closely with officers in looking at the composition, particularly the main street, but also as the entrance into the development important to get that right. And therefore, the units on either side of that main street, heading up to where there is the turn towards the west, are the same developer on both sides of that street. Once you then progress into some of the other streets, there is greater informality and variety in unit types in any event. We work very carefully to ensure that there is consistency of the architectural approach between the different developers involved.
Although not directly relevant to this reserve matters, can you give an indication of what sort of likely numbers are going to be coming forward over what period? Because obviously the build out on this is going to stretch over a number of years. And give just an approximate indication on that.
It will fluctuate, it will be subject to market conditions, of course, with all those usual caveats, but when the development was initially conceived, we were looking at around 100, slightly above 100 perhaps per annum. It will be a more gradual uplift to get to that rate initially, of course, with the initial infrastructure, but around an average of around 100 a year is probably a good rule of thumb.
Any other members wishing to raise any issues on this point?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. I just noticed on page 107 that the Paris Council have a few concerns. One of which is the location of the parking spaces in proximity to the affordable housing on a premise that parking located distance away from the plot is less likely to be used. And also they have a concern over the refuse collection strategy. Could you just give us a comment on that, please?
The parking I think they're talking about is at the top of the neighbourhood loop here. This area here. This has been provided and is intended to serve those dwellings, and I think there's access to the rear of those houses through garden gates, etc. So they will be encouraged to use those spaces as much as possible. We can't control everybody's parking, but there are also a requirement of the outline plan application is a parking management plan as well to be provided, so we can have a look at those issues should they arise.
And refuse?
I think the reference here was to suggestion that refuse vehicles would have to turn on land that would include private parking areas, I think if I recall it correctly. And how, obviously, if people are legitimately parked in their parking spaces, and can we be sure refuse vehicles can satisfactorily turn and serve the area?
We tried to clarify this with the Sheffield Parish because we weren't certain how they accepted the plan, but we haven't had any issues with the sweat farms that have provided demonstrating that.
Thank you.
Sounds to be more likely their interpretation of the plan.
Yeah,
It's not possibly a misinterpretation.
I just wanted to get out. Thank you.
Right, Mark.
Just a quick question. It says on page 90 that the roads are 4.8 metres wide because there's no buses going to go through there. But on the paragraph below, I think, it mentions some tight corners to avoid speed. Will those be things like 90-degree corners to reduce it? Because that tends to have a an effect on visibility around corners, isn't it? Somewhere in there, about corners it mentions. Yes, paragraph 52. Low vehicle speeds. Well, corners are not generally where people are speeding anywhere.
They're not on the main section. You mentioned obviously the 4.8 metre wide, that's only on the side roads. The main carriageway through the site, which would enable the bus, is 6.1 metres.
Okay, and
but
the
the
tight corners
sections-
will be on the same.
The tight corners are just a kind of a man in the street kind of measure in terms of changing the character of the area, slowing vehicles right down, even on bends. But there is adequate visibility for all of them. There's not many tight bends when we're talking. It's kind of, I assume we talk about this area here, and these are all obviously in lower key areas. We've got pallet materials as well, where it's likely that these areas may have not paving to kind of change the
It's really
character.
got to be, which look different to that. Okay, thank you.
Right, well, I see no other members indicating they wish to speak. Members have got a clear recommendation in front of you. As I said at the introduction, that seems to have broad support. So could you please indicate that you're prepared to support the officer's recommendation? And that is unanimously carried. Thank you, members. So that's you're off. Your first phase is underway. Right. We now move on to page 109. Sorry, for those who want to leave, we'll just wait for you to leave. Thank you. Right, we'll move now on to the land north of Lane End Farm. I think, Chris, you're going to present on this one as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. We're on lands north of Capish Lane, Shinfield, Reading again, back in Shinfield. This is the site of the science park located in the context of the South End for SDL. The allocated site is shown highlighted in red. Just a bit about the site background. Several years ago we had, in 2009 I think it was, the outline application for the first phase of the science park. The science park was originally allocated by the Port Strategy for 55,000 square metres, which is broadly shown on this indicative master plan across the entire site parcel. The outline plan application included the indicative master plan to show how it can be brought forward as part of this plan. The outline planning consent was for part of the allocated site was granted in 2010, and the area permitted is roughly shown outlined in red. Access was approved for this part of the site for 19,000 square metres of employment space, and the outline application established development parameters, including building heights. The use of the science park is to serve research and development-based employment together with high-tech uses, and the science park will serve as an important employment hub with good links to the South End for SDL and wider area. The proposal under consideration tonight is a reserve matters application for one of the first buildings for the science park in phase 1A, and it relates to the gateway building adjacent to the Eastern Relief Road. At this stage, 6,900 square metres of building is proposed, and this includes 195 square metres of ancillary cafe use. Look at the site itself now. The site is located to the north of Catbush Lane and to south of the M4 motorway. The site area comprises 5.7 hectares of the 19.2 hectares of land approved under the outline planning consent. The land slopes gently down from north to south, and the site is located close to the centre of Shinfield and housing within the area. There is also residential development that has been approved to the west of the site at Catbush Lane. In terms of access, the Eastern Relief Road will serve the primary access to the site. As you may be aware, the Eastern Relief Road has been fully funded by HEA loan in the form of a grant. And it is going to be delivered all in one phase. Work is well underway on site, which started in April, and a significant amount of groundwork has already been started upon, and it's expected to be completed in early 2016. This slide shows the layout of the Phase 1A building. The footprint of the building is shown on this slide. This is close to the Eastern Relief Road in order to provide a sensible arrival to the Science Park. Within the Science Park, the access road is proposed with a 3-arm roundabout. This has been designed to accommodate the demand for future phases of the development. A temporary car park is proposed to the northwest of the site behind the Gateway building. And ultimately, once the other buildings are brought forward within this development parcel, the car park will be relocated to the north, adjacent to the M4 motorway. In terms of landscaping, the application proposes a significant amount of landscaping both within the site and on the edges. On the land to the northwest of Cutbush Lane, an ecological mitigation area is proposed. This extends round to the south-east of the access road, where a suds feature is also included. These features provide a strong buffer between the Science Park and the surrounding areas. Structural planting will be included in these areas to strengthen the appearance of these areas and also bring benefits to biodiversity. On the western boundary of the site, there is a good buffer between the building and the Eastern Relief Road. And within the site, further soft landscaping is proposed, which includes street trees and low-level planting. This will provide a campus or boulevard type feel along the main street. Landscaping is also complemented by proposed hard landscaping materials and street furniture. Moving on to the appearance of the building now. The building is 3 stories in height, with a height of 15.2 metres, with flues to serve the function of the building beyond this. The building height is in accordance with the parameter plans, and a gateway building would provide a landmark feature from Eastern Relief Road and would create a sense of arrival to the Science Park. To provide a bespoke appearance compared to other business parks in the area, surfacing of the materials of the building are a mixture of Corten steel, glazing and steel cladding. The Corten gives the building a natural appearance when set against the landscape, which will subtly change in colour over time. In terms of the elevations, the top elevation here is a perspective view of the site taken from the Eastern Relief Road, which will be visible as you approach the site from the south. And the bottom is from within the courtyard, which leads to the main avenue to the site, and the ancillary cafe space is shown there. At the top of the next slide is the site from within the site, just adjacent to the 3-arm roundabout. And at the bottom, there's a view taken inside the site along the main street, showing the landscaping and planting within this area. In terms of the internal floor plans, the orange colour is ancillary floor space, and at the ground floor there will be a cafe. And on the other floors, the purple areas are the lab areas, and the associated office uses are shown in green. In terms of phasing, this slide shows the indicative phasing of the Science Park, and at present there's 4 phases of delivery of the buildings approved under the original outline plan application. These demonstrate the consideration of the delivery of the site as a whole, which is more evident in the next slide. And as you can see, building 2 would link onto the gateway building, providing a wrap around the site adjacent to the Eastern Relief Road, providing a further sense of arrival to the Science Park. And then we have a further 2 buildings that would come forward at a later stage. And just moving on to employment, for Phase 1A, it's expected to create 300 jobs with a total for the Science Park at 5,000 jobs once fully completed across the allocated sites. These figures exclude construction jobs. Moving on to recommendation. The recommendation is to approve subject to the conditions set out in the report and within the members' update. And there's just a couple of items on the members' update. It's just, again, an update on the plans. A full composite set of plans being provided here. And an update on condition 5 in regards to materials. The applicant has confirmed the material that will be used for the steel, the anodised aluminium, rain screen cladding. And so the other materials have been removed from that condition. And it's just an update to conditions 4, 5, 6, 11, 12, 13, 17 and 20. There were some notes appended to these in order to discharge the conditions due on the outline planning application. We can't do it that way, we need conditions discharge applications put forward. It's a matter of procedure.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Chris. And I invite Nick Patterson-Neil again as agent to speak on the University of Reading application.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening once again. As members will recall, outline planning permission for the science park was granted in 2010. And the application before you tonight is the first, again, of a series of reserve matters applications. This is indeed the first building for what is now known as Thames Valley Science Park. The application of both universities made, therefore, in relation to the Gateway building, which aims to deliver an early identity and brand aspiration for the park and its future phases. The Gateway building will deliver a front-of-house presence for small and medium-sized enterprises on a very high-quality flagship development within Wokingham Borough at the heart of the Thames Valley. And that will very much encourage inward investment and a new commercial offering to the knowledge economy market within the Thames Valley and the wider South East. Locally, of course, the Science Park will enhance the borough's employment base, and as you've heard, in terms of the quantity of jobs, but importantly, it's the quality of those jobs as well. And those highly skilled jobs will offer opportunities for the borough's existing resident skilled workforce. Science Park is also integral to the overall sustainability in a wider sense of the adjoining SDI to its immediate west, which in its entirety will be seen really now as a place where not only people can live, but where jobs, a significant number of jobs will be created, so people will be able to live and work in the same location. And the Gateway building, therefore, before you tonight, is really the catalyst for the successful delivery of the wider park to follow. The Gateway building, as Mr. Howard has already identified, will provide multi-tenanted, flexible accommodation with specialist lab facilities, offices and support facilities at the entrance of the site, alongside a hub facility which is on the pivot, the area orange on the slide before you. And that's important in terms of the ongoing management and interaction between future buildings and services for the different organisations who will be on the park. The building and the landscape surrounding it are being designed together very much to encourage collaboration and invite interaction between those who will occupy the park. And it's important that the material choices of the architecture reflect the contrasting approach and respond to the aspirations both of a strong brand identity and presence on the one hand, and secondly a dynamic and distinctive positive presence on the M4 corridor, as well as a very vibrant and visible building that companies want to be associated with. Now, the appearance of the Gateway building reflects both, of course, its internal use, as you can see, but also, as the officer's report indicates, its very striking design creates a very distinctive sense of place with the surrounding landscape. The materials are broken down into three primary elements. The main building clad in Corten weathered steel with full height glazing, as you can see on the slide. Apertures set out to maximise the flexibility for the internal use for each structural bay of the building itself. With a central support spine designed to provide a unifying and more of a neutral backdrop. It's hard to see on those images, but perhaps from the 2D elevations it's more clearly shown. And then an amenity hub, which again uses the Corten external treatment, but in alternate panel orientation. And just to conclude, the proposal has been subject to detailed consultation, including public exhibition and design review, and presentation to the community forum. On behalf of the University, I fully support the recommendation, invite members to approve this very important proposal to enable the delivery of the first phase of the Science Park. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, we don't have any specific ward members for Shinfield here, so I'll throw it open to members of the committee. Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. We're looking on page 121, the Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire Wildlife Trust, with the comments they made there. I can't see a reference to that being addressed in the conditions. Was that covered in the outline application?
Yes. Right. Yes.
I'll refer to the Chairman, I'll just refer to the relevant sections.
Thank you.
Report. Yes. It is actually
Right. Okay. Right. It actually refers to it, Chris, on page 130, under where it addresses each of the points raised. So if you look at quote 41, it says the delivery of the areas and their ongoing maintenance is secured via the Section 106 agreement and the outline permission. So it says how it outlines. Rochelle?
Cyclopaths within the car park, within the whole park of Science Park. Also cyclopaths along the Shinfield Relief Road. Will they all be connected to other cycle paths as well?
Chris?
In terms of cyclopaths, the cyclopaths, there's a network on Cutbush Lane that will also link through to Shinfield Road, which will then link into Shinfield West through to Spencer's Wood. There's also through previous schemes as well. Funding secure for footpath 80, which will then footpath 80, 20, which then leads you right out to Junction 11, which will then lead through to Green Park. So it does link into connectivity that the network already has. In terms of the relief road, there isn't any cycleways identified along the length of that, south of the roundabout that's currently being delivered.
Will the cycle paths be on the pavement? Will they be on the road? Will it separated?
There's a mix. There's a mix through existing roads, obviously through the developments that come forward. It's not necessarily related to the science park that we've got here, but obviously improvements at Cutbush Lane. There's some footpath improvements along Cutbush Lane itself. Then leading down Shinfield Road, there is on-road and off-road facilities, and then various places through Church Lane leading down into the new developments at Spencer's Wood, 3 Mile Cross and Shinfield West itself. There'll be a mix through the development site.
Okay.
Question on the service order. On this application, you've got built-in 20% increase for climate change. The previous application, there was a 30% increase. I just wondered what the standard was. And then I've got another point to make afterwards.
Yeah, I think it's a typo on the science part report. It is 30%. I've checked that, so it is 30%. And I think it's just fingers on the keyboard.
Okay, thank you.
Second point.
Yeah, second point. I noticed there was a comment from what was claimed to be a early town councillor. I think that was back in May. That person was a councillor. They're no longer a councillor. And their ward actually doesn't abut this application. Mine is a lot closer. So I think it should be regarded more of as a resident passing comment.
John?
Yes, just some observation, Chairman. I think it's a high-tech business park. I would ask the developers to consider maybe charging points for electric cars wherever possible. I know there's grants available, and there are also some car manufacturers will actually provide them. I'm sure some of your high-tech people will be using electric cars in the future. It's just something for consideration.
A couple of points I'll make. I think the building itself is a very strong image. It's quite a landmark building, and I think it will presumably set a pretty high standard for the rest of the science park as it comes forward. I think particularly worth noting that I think if I heard the planning officer correctly, that there'll be whole science park will start by generating 300 jobs, but when completed will be 5,000 permanent jobs. That obviously doesn't include the significant number of temporary jobs during the construction period. So it's a pretty big enterprise. My only regret, of course, it won't influence my outlook on this. I did have an informal agreement with the previous Vice Chancellor of the University that since it was wholly in Wokingham, we'd actually call it the Wokingham Science Park. But I guess Thames Valley is better than it being called the Reading. So there's a suitable compromise there. Right, I see no other members indicating they wish to speak on this reserved matters item. So are you content to support the officer's recommendation? Could you please indicate? And that is also approved unanimously. Thank you, members. We now move on to the application that for additional dementia care rooms at Lord Harris Court. Just to remind that Bob Pitts has declared a prejudicial interest in this. He's going to, as he's entitled to listen to the presentations, but he'll then leave the room when we come on to discussing the material. So, right. This is being presented by Mark Croucher. Good evening, Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. There are several updates included in the update sheet to brief members' attention to. These start on page 9. An additional condition has been recommended to ensure that the 24 bedrooms proposed and the dimension for extra care use are retained in perpetuity. There are 3 additional conditions recommended to ensure the development has a satisfactory impact on ecology and biodiversity. And further clarification has been provided regarding the existing and proposed parking figures. And finally, further clarification has been provided as the condition numbers referred to in the body of the report were out of sync with the list of conditions. I'll be happy to elaborate on this further if necessary. Moving on to the application, the proposal is for the erection of a 2-storey extension to Lord Harris Court, which will comprise of 24 bedrooms for extra specialist dementia care following the demolition of the existing single-storey structure. Landscaping works are also proposed to the south and to the west of the main building. And on the screen at the moment is the location plan, and you can see Lord Harris Court in the middle of the slide, and it's the single-storey extension to the north of that building, just depicted as well. This is an aerial photo of the site to show it in a bit more context. As you can see, to the south is Mole Road, and that's where the access to the site is at the moment, and that's where it will remain. To the east is Mayfields and also Mayfield Mews, and to the south is the Masonic Centre where the existing parking takes place at the moment. The areas in red are where the proposed landscaping and parking will be. To the south and to the west of the main building, and to the north will be where the 2-storey extension will be located. This is the proposed site plan, and as you can see, to the south of the main building is where the additional landscaping and car parking will be. To the west of the building there will also be another small parking area, and to the north of the main building, shaded in pink on that plan, is where the proposed 2-storey extension will be located. Moving on to the proposed elevations, starting with the one at the top, this is the west elevation, and it's the actual proposed extensions to the left of that drawing, and the remaining part of the building to the right is the existing Lord Harris Court. The second one down is the south elevation, and that will be the elevation that fronts onto an internal courtyard. The third one down is the north elevation, and this will be the elevation that will front onto the properties called Fryesh, and also the Evergreens, which is mentioned in the report. And finally at the bottom is the east elevation, and you can see it just to the right of that drawing there. These are some CGI images will hopefully give the members a better indication of how the finished building will actually look. And they're taken from an aerial perspective, and as you can see the west elevation in the top left. There's 2 south elevations in the top right and bottom left, and the north elevation in the bottom right, and once again this is the elevation that will back onto the properties known as the Fryesh and the Evergreens. These are just the floor plans to the building. The proposed extension is once again shaded in pink, with the existing building of Lord Harris Court shaded in blue. To the right of that slide is just a typical room layout to give members an idea of the facilities provided. Starting with the top left picture, this is the existing front of Lord Harris Court and the main entrance under the portico there. The green, area in green in the flagpole will be changed to landscaping and additional parking, and there'll be additional landscaping to the front of the building as well. The small picture in the bottom right-hand corner is where the additional parking to the west of the main building will be located, and as you can see there's actually some informal hard servicing already there, and it's actually used as informal parking as existing. The 2 pictures here of the north of the site, starting with the top left-hand picture. You can see to the right the existing single-storey structure which is proposed to be demolished, and and that will be the proposed two-storey extension will be. Just to clarify, the extension will be located further back from where that building is at the moment. And the property to the left of that slide, of that picture, is the Fryash. And moving on to the bottom right, this is just looking at the way where the top left picture was taken. And once again, you can see the properties, the Fryash, the Evergreens, and the one furthest away is called Monsoons. And the top left-hand picture here, this is looking from Mayfield Mews towards Lord Harris Court, and you can just see the existing building there. The photo montage in the bottom right-hand corner, once again, is of Lord Harris Court, and you can just make out the existing single-storey extension there, which is proposed to be demolished. Here I've shown the CGI images which are proposed with the existing site, and they're roughly taken from similar angles and locations, and as you can see, I should clarify, this is actually the east elevation on both these slides, not the west elevation as shown on the PowerPoint presentation. And then as you can see in the top left is the existing site, and if you look at the two-storey bay window projecting bay there, you can gives a good reference point of where the extension will be located. And also that's the elevation which will be partially seen from Mayfield Mews. Moving on to the bottom two images, once again this is the north elevation, and you can see the existing single-storey building or extension which will be removed. And once again this is the elevation which will front onto Fryash and the Evergreens. And finally this is the north elevation as well, and once again just showing a similar angle of existing and proposed. To conclude, Chairman, the application is considered to be acceptable for the reasons as set out in the report and subject to the conditions and informances listed in the report and the members' update sheet. I'll be happy to answer any further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We don't have anybody registered to speak. Bob, you're just going to leave while we deliberate. Thank you. So we come, Rochelle, you're a member, I believe. So straight to you.
My only question is about floodlights.
Try again.
My only question is about floodlights, because we did see some floodlights at the edge there. Most of the lights would be fine, but floodlights would disturb the residents in some of these places. We'd like to have a restriction about floodlights, and also possibly they were talking about keeping some of the blinds shut in the evening so the light won't cause light pollution to the residents in the area.
Right. I think you find that that's referred to in condition 7, I think it is. It says no development should take place until a scheme to deal with light contamination of the site has been submitted in the rooms. That will give the local planning authority the opportunity to agree something that is appropriate.
Since they hadn't done it yet, I just want to make sure that they were there.
And I think, we saw that when we attended the site visit.
Most of the lamps were right up against the wall there, and they weren't a problem.
Yeah.
But floodlights might be a problem there.
Okay. While we're just covering that area, could we just get some clarification? The properties, I think, is in Evergreens and so on, they obviously look out on the single-storey element at the moment. They're going to obviously have a two-storey element they look out. Could you just clarify whether there's going to be any boundary screening or planting within the control of the applicant that's proposed?
Yeah, just to, I guess, elaborate on that point further, the separation distance between the two buildings will be 22 metres at the minimum, and considering the tapered elevation, it'll be further away, quite a bit further away from some points. We have put a landscaping condition on because we do recognise that the boundary there is relatively exposed, and the building will be relatively monolithic in comparison to those residential extensions. So some proposed landscaping in that location would also soften the impact of the building, and also what the previous member referred to, it would also dampen some of the light pollution as well coming from the building.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other members, have we got John?
It's just one question actually. Reading the first page of the report on 75, it says there's been no strong objections from neighbours or residents. There is no objections at all. What are the objections?
Yeah, there was only one neighbour representation received, and that was worded that they didn't object to the principle of development. Their main concern was light pollution from the building, which hopefully we tackled in condition 7.
The local ward member is interested. Any other members wishing to speak on that? This is a quite straightforward application, and it's providing a facility that sadly is going to be needed in increasing numbers in the coming years, I think. So, members, no one else wishing to speak. We'll go straight to the vote on this. All those members wishing to support the officer recommendation, please indicate. Again, that is supported by the 7 members, and Chris, if you can get Bob back here. Thank you, Mark. Right, now move on to the GTO engineering application. When we attended the site visit, you'll be aware that we were passed a handout by the, obviously since a couple of members of the committee didn't attend the site visit, if you'd like to take one of those, to familiarise yourself with the input from the agent. We'll go straight to Ashley Smith to talk us through this, just to remind members that the majority of us visited the site on Friday morning and how they're the site from various vantage points as well.
Thank you, Chairman. The proposal is for the proposed demolition of existing buildings and the erection of a 2-storey extension to the existing office building for the service, repair and restoration of motor vehicles, use class B2, ancillary accommodation, car parking and landscaping. The site is located just off the A4 in Wargrave within the Metropolitan Greenbelt as well as the countryside. This plan shows it here in relation to the A4, so it's the red site to the north of the road. Adjacent is Wyville Garden Centre, and diagonally to the southeast is Hare Hatch Garden Centre. This photo shows the existing buildings on site. So on the left-hand side, running up to here is parts of the application site. This is the existing building which members saw on the site visit, and is to be retained. This building and buildings to the rear are all to be demolished. Right, so this slide here shows the proposed drawings put forward. As previously stated, the applicant is a car repair business which specialises in very high-end vehicles, as members saw on site on Friday. It's mainly Ferraris, but also other prestige vehicles. A lot of the parts are made on site, and the business previously existed on Scarlett's Lane within the borough. Has been operating here for many years. Due to site and lease pressures, they had to leave the Scarlett's Lane site, and so moved in here and are currently operating out of a temporary building, as well as the main building itself. We saw the temporary building on Friday. There is currently a planning application with officers for that, and that will be considered separately from this proposal. As we can see, the building proposed is very large. If we take the scale of the main existing building there and look at the size of the building, it's nearly 3 times as wide and in a horseshoe shape, which we can see here. So the comparative depth here, going back here, it's just there's no way of putting it, but it's a very large building. Sorry, these are more photos of the previous use of the site. It was previously operated on by Navy, who did, I think, some kind of bridge construction and similar operations. So there was a reasonable amount of outdoor storage and other uses of the site. This photo shows again the existing current use. You can see the building is well set back from the road. However, members should remember that this site is within the greenbelt, and so the test of harm really isn't whether or not you can see the volume; it's the physical presence of the volume which is the issue.
It's proposed that the increased volume on the site, well, the increased floor space on the site will be 2,000 additional square metres, which is a very substantial increase in floor space. And officers aren't convinced that very special circumstances exist on the site. Whilst it is acknowledged that the employer does operate in a professional manner and is well valued within the borough, officers aren't convinced that there is such a need to expand the site to the degree proposed, and that the employment use can be retained in the borough with a lesser level of development, while still maintaining jobs and contributing towards the economy. The applicants made a number of points in favour of their development. They consider this would consolidate a number of related services on one site. It could increase employment from around 28 people to potentially 50 people. They're very keen to remain in the borough, and they point out that a lot of these cars are very high end and of high value. And they've got a highly skilled staff base currently in the area. However, having given all these issues consideration, there is no reason why this development has to be located within a greenbelt location, and officers aren't convinced that this is the only site available for this purpose, and rather this would be, whilst a nice place to be, this business could be accommodated in another location which would be significantly less harmful to the greenbelt, which, as we all know, is the most protected level in planning. The Highway Department satisfied that the development won't have any significant adverse effect, and so in terms of harm, we're really just looking at substantial harm to the greenbelt by intrusive increases in volume and harm to the beauty and nature of the countryside. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ashley. Right, Bob, straight to you as ward member. Sorry, I apologise. Could I invite Jonathan Walter, the agent? I'm just getting a little ahead of myself.
I'll crack on because I've a lot to get through in 3 minutes. The key to determination of this application is the balance of economic, social and environmental benefit against perceived impact on Greenbelt, and relevant policy in this respect is primarily set out in the NPPF. Paragraph 81 advocates opportunities to retain and enhance landscapes or to improve damaged and derelict land. The application delivers on this. Paragraph 89 states that the partial redevelopment of previously developed sites which would not have a greater impact on the openness of the Greenbelt can be acceptable. The application should be assessed against this criterion rather than simple terms of an extension to the existing building. There are many other buildings and hard standing being removed, and the development in this regard is not disproportionate. Openness refers to the context of development within the wider environment which it's set. GTO has gone to great lengths to demonstrate the proposals to reduce overall built footprint by almost half a hectare, and that visible development is limited. The new building is only visible from one viewpoint, and when it's in that case it's seen in the context of surrounding development as well as being partly screened by the existing Navy house. The overall effect of proposed developments is significantly lessened by increased landscaping and by virtue of the removal of numerous buildings on site and hard standing, which has been and could again be used under the expansion permission for storage. The images provided to the committee very clearly demonstrate these points, and actually is showing as well there. In environment and planning terms, this is a precedent that the council should want to support. It significantly improves the appearance of the site, is more relevant to its surroundings, it sets a high standard for other relevant applications, it provides significantly greater control over land and buildings than is currently the case, has Greenbelt creation and protection at its heart. GTO is a rare British success story and is a world player in the manufacture, rebuilding and servicing of classic Ferraris. In economic and social terms, the proposals help upskill the council's population, increase its international profile, and meet wider strategic council objectives, most notably strategic priorities 1, 2 and 4 of your economic development strategy, as well as that echoed in the Thames Valley MEP strategic economic plan. The economic and social benefits have been set out in the briefing notes, but to summarise, the development will retain 28 specialist engineering jobs in the borough, generate a further minimum 18 specialist engineering jobs, provide more than 2.3 gross value added income to the council's economy per annum, provide ongoing opportunities for apprenticeships in the borough and build upon existing links with local schools. Finally, this proposal has been developed subsequent to very significant discussion with the council, that this site was offered to GTO by the council's economic development team. The temporary site was only progressed following several pre-application meetings with officers, and a very, very detailed site search across 5 boroughs was undertaken, taking on board information that has been provided to more than 20 agents. The site meets GTO's very unique circumstances and client requirements. A standard industrial site would not be applicable given the need for security, circumspection and caching. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, so that's the registered speaker. So,
Do you mean that?
yes, I now turn to as the board member.
Thank you. First of all, I want to correct a few things that Ashley said. One, Hare Hatch is not a garden centre, which is why it's being enforced against. 2, GTO only do Ferraris to the best of my knowledge. The applicant's already covered one of the points I was going to make. The Walgrove Parish Council objected on highways issues. Well, it's a pre-existing site, so I don't think that's relevant at all. Right, I just want to say I'm looking at the site as an individual standalone application. I know we have other sites in the area that have problems, actually in my ward, but we are always told we should look at an application as an individual application and not take other things into consideration. So that's what I'm going to do. The fundamental reason for the officer recommendation appears to be the openness and visual amenity of the Greenbelt. They have given the standard definition of what the Greenbelt is and its purpose. To reiterate, the Greenbelt serves 5 purposes. To check unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas. This site does not, in my opinion, create an unrestricted sprawl. That point 1 is a fundamental point in the government briefing paper dated 30th of June 2015, where they say the fundamental thing for the Greenbelt is to protect urban sprawl, against urban sprawl. It's also to protect neighbouring towns merging into one another. I don't think the site impacts on this at all. To assist in safeguarding the countryside from encroachment, again, my personal belief is it doesn't do this. To preserve the setting and special character of historic towns, I don't think that's relevant in this case. To assist in urban regeneration, by encouraging the recycling of derelict and urban land. This site, which to my mind, and I've known it for a long time, has been very untidy and awful. I think it's being spruced up to a high standard, and it's also maintaining that iconic building at the front there, which if this application is not approved, any other applicant could come in and get rid of. And it's a building that people in the area know and love. The openness of the Greenbelt is fundamentally so people can enjoy the countryside and go into it to do so. They can't in this site. Much is made by us as a fact that they could have looked at other sites. They have done, and on the recommendation of our own economic development officers, went for this one, as it was suggested that it was right for development. As a ward member for the area, and also a well-known champion of the Greenbelt, this is where I have a problem, this application provided me with a few headaches. However, looking at the economic benefit that this brings to the borough, the contribution to the economy by people that are coming in, the very highly skilled workforce and the highly skilled engineering apprenticeships, they actually manufacture their own components there, and government policy is that we encourage engineering apprenticeships and upskill our workforce. At the site visit on Friday, I was fortunate to be able to chat to one of the engineers and some of the apprentices. I asked if they were planning to take on more staff. I was told that they would love to, but they have a problem with capacity. I was also told that Ferrari have asked them to build some of the older models of cars so that Ferrari can concentrate on building the newer models. They are said to be the first company outside of Italy that Ferrari have asked to do this. So they're not just any old car repair business. I think that's a supreme testimonial to the skill base at GTO. I asked one of the apprentices what he would have been doing had he not been employed at GTO. He said he would have done automotive engineering, but this work at GTO was so interesting, especially as they machined some of their own components there. It's a really skilled operation. I cannot believe that WBC officers suggested they should have looked outside the borough. Why should we encourage other boroughs to have economic development when we need it in our own borough? I can state with a high degree of certainty that, to the best of my belief, I think we'll lose this company. I have no evidence for that, it's just my gut feeling. Therefore, on balance, and after very careful consideration, especially as it's the Greenbelt issues, I should not be supporting the officer's recommendation to refuse, and at a suitable point, after further detailed discussion, if nothing else persuades me differently, I shall be proposing that the application for planning permission is granted to enable GTO to continue their business and bring great prestige and economic benefit to the borough. Especially, as I've mentioned earlier, the government is quite keen on highly skilled engineering apprenticeships in business. It's policy, it's not law. Very often we're told by officers when we query something, it's policy. It's not law. This is Greenbelt policy, it's not law. We have a unique situation here, and my opinion at the minute, and I'm open to being persuaded differently, but my opinion at the minute is that the economic benefits that this brings to the borough and the workforce, and a highly skilled workforce, far outweigh any potential harm to the Greenbelt. It's not an open site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Other members wishing to speak? Michelle.
I'd like to agree with Bob. Having high skilled apprenticeships for our young people is very important. It's one of the keystones of government policy and also Woking Borough policy to increase people in our area. Also, I think that it will create very good jobs for our local people. And we need good jobs here. We don't need to send them to another borough in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. John?
I have to agree with both Rachel and Bob with regards to the economics. But oh dear, it's just so big. It is in the green belt. I'm really torn on this purely and simply because I do think that we do need to retain skills such as this, and I quite like the idea of having them remain in the borough, and hopefully, even if this isn't successful, they will do that. But it is a big building. It's a very big building. When you look at it, the plan, and we all know the issues and what we do to defend the green belt. At this moment in time, I'm torn between, I must admit.
Chair, yeah, sure. I am going to continue to discourage members from approving this. It is a very, very large building, bringing in inappropriate volume into a Greenbelt location. As Councillor Kaiser just pointed out, this isn't the last chance for GTO on this site here. Officers don't have a fundamental problem with GTO operating out of this site. They have a fundamental problem with the overall scale of what's being proposed here, which is vastly disproportionate to anything we previously approved in the Greenbelt in recent years. Councillor Pitts is correct that it is a policy matter. However, Greenbelt is pretty much the most fundamental planning policy around. It's been around since 1948. It has a very well-established history to it. If this application was to be overturned, I should point out that it will need to be referred to the National Planning Casework Unit, who may take a different view on that point there. But the main point I'm going to make is that I don't think that this is the scheme that officers should settle for, members should settle for. I think that there is a balance to be struck here with a lower amount of development, where which can retain duty on the borough and still offer economic benefits. It's marginal gain we're talking about here, and we should really be looking to secure a better scheme, in my opinion.
Okay, all right. Just see if we've got any other members who haven't spoken, and then we'll come back to you, Bob. Malcolm?
I'm having difficulty with this because Greenbelt to me, open sort of countryside, is fields and so on. This is a place that already has a building on it, where people and vehicles have been working for some time. It's almost like a brown site development, really. Just building on that rather than in the middle of an open field. The other attractive thing is it does increase the number of jobs available, and high-tech jobs at that, which we want to keep. I think I read in here there was something like 50 to 70% increase in staff, which is quite good. If they don't stay there or they don't expand, those opportunities could go elsewhere, whether it's there or somewhere. It's a difficult one. I wasn't on the site visit, that's the problem, so I have some difficulty in knowing what to do at the moment. I'm actually in favour of the comments made by Bob overall. It's going to be a difficult choice.
Wayne?
Yeah, I think I'm with Bob and Michelle. It's a very difficult one. I live in Scarlets Lane, so I've experienced this business, and living there for 5 years, for 4 years, I didn't even know they operated from there. The site isn't like you would imagine a greenfield site. It's if you could go back, Ashley, if you could you put the drawing up you had where you've got the neighbouring. There's 2 points really. There's the one where you said that you would be viewing it as you drive into the Withell. So you've got that, yeah, if you go back.
This one here?
Yeah, so I'm wondering if we could deal with that with landscaping, if you could go on. No, sorry, if you can go back and if you look at that site as it is at the moment.
Okay.
No, sorry, if you go back, you're that one there.
Okay.
It's on the site visit on Friday. There is a lot of stuff there, and I think this actually tidies the site up. I mean, and they are a professional outfit. Seeing them operate at Scarlets Lane, they're a very professional outfit, and I think it would be a shame to lose them out of the area. I'm not saying we will, but it is a difficult one. I understand from both sides.
Okay. Chris, you haven't spoken.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Ashley just said if we approve this, it would go to form of an appeal.
No, it's the National Planning Agency, because
Yeah.
it's contrary.
Because it's contrary to policy. I think this is clearly is against policy. We have to determine whether there are special circumstances or not to warrant an approval. I think if this were approved in the end, it would severely damage the green belt. I think you can imagine lots of applications coming forward of a similar nature, and gradually they would start to eat into the green belt. We would lose it. We need very special reasons, as the report says. 25 to 50 employment opportunities is a good thing, but my judgment is that is not sufficient. I do not see anyway why there can't be any other sites in the borough or outside the borough, not in the green belt, maybe in the countryside, where this facility could be operated from. So I don't think on balance that the evidence to go against policy is strong enough, and I should be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Okay.
Could I make a fundamental point?
Just a minute. Tim?
Yeah,
We'll come round into it.
yes, thank you, Chairman. I can't recall seeing a larger building coming to us to be built in the green belt. Looking at the figures I calculated, it's 77% larger, which is absolutely huge. The main reason that we get into that we should give this special consideration is something like 22 new jobs, which clearly I would welcome. But we had an application earlier today which was 5,000 new jobs. Vastly more, and it wasn't on the green belt. So I'm really struggling to see why this is special. If the people that work in there are so key to it, even if it did move a few miles just outside our borough to Buckingham, those people that currently live in Wokingham Borough Council would still be employed. But I think there are other places, as we've just seen in an earlier application, where you could build something like this. And we also need to remember, this isn't, if you approve this, it isn't just for this applicant. Anybody could have it after we've approved it, and it could be something else, and they could be leaving it in a mess. A approving it doesn't guarantee it's all going to be tied in looking like what the current thing is. Thank you.
Okay, just invite the agent to add a comment.
I think is fundamental, as we've seen from the fantastic pictures of what the Greenbelt, as we've seen from the fantastic pictures of what the Greenbelt actually does look like. Fundamentally, this is actually providing back, irrespective of the building, almost half a hectare of Greenbelt back to the Greenbelt. It's creating Greenbelt. So in terms of setting a precedent, it's setting one hell of a good precedent for the council, and that's something it really needs to think about.
Chair.
I have a few things to say now. Right, I think we need to think about the visibility. I'll come back to you. I haven't spoken yet. One of the things with Greenbelt we heard about at the beginning was its visibility and the fact that it was there. I've seen it not just on Greenbelt but in countryside appeal decisions where somebody has said this should be allowed because it can't be seen from any public viewpoint. Planning inspectors have disagreed with them. This is in countryside, which is not afforded the same level of protection, and used the argument that the countryside is there, that it is to be protected regardless of whether anyone can see it or not. So I'm a little bit wary about the fact that the site is quite well screened. Okay. I'm also concerned about the precedent that a couple of other people have already alluded to, that it could set a precedent, and as Tim has already mentioned, whilst clearly GTO have shown a commitment to the borough, and I personally appreciate that, we no guarantee that they would stay in the borough, and if we were to allow this, it could be actually put to a different, similar category of use, which may be something less significant. We've heard about the economic benefits and the suggestion that, I don't dispute that economic development staff at the council encourage them to use the site. I have no doubt that they did, because I've seen the report the Economic Development Officer wrote back from 2013. But I don't think, as far as I'm aware, the Economic Development Officer encouraged them to come up with a gross increase of more than 2,000 square metres. So I think we need to keep it in perspective that there was a suggestion that it should be a suitable site, but not necessarily a site on this scale. And from the knowledge of the report, there was no indication that it should be of a particular scale that would or would not be acceptable. We need to provide very special circumstances, and that is something that we do very, very rarely, and I'm concerned that we need to be able to prove that if members wanted to support an overturn of the officer's recommendation. And when that decision, if that was made, goes to the National Planning Unit for determination. So that's something I'd like to consider. We've certainly agreed, I think we are all agreed, I don't think anyone has really agreed that this isn't an on-balance decision. There are a number of quite significant factors here that we have to consider. But I think we need to be very cautious about the officer's recommendation being overturned for the reasons that I've already stated. But I'm going to let Ashley come back and speak, and then I'll revert to Bob and so on.
Ashley, can I just respond, Chairman?
Yeah, okay. Ashley first.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, you really covered the point I was going to make, was that it is an issue of openness, and that no amount of landscaping or removing tarmac replaces the openness. We're talking about an increase in volume on the site, and as you quite rightly pointed out, if we were to agree if generally the principle is accepted that if you can't see it, it doesn't cause any harm, we'd be approving houses every week in wooded secluded areas because you can't see them. And in fact, next month we'll be bringing forward a house in the Green Belt and considering the merits of that case. And so, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't affect openness and cause harm.
Okay. Bob.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, openness, to me, reading all this stuff on Greenbelt and government papers on it, means access to the Greenbelt and open space. There's no way you could construe that space as an open space, an openness in the Greenbelt. Now, I want to come back to the scale of the building. One thing I forgot to mention when I was talking to the engineers there, I said, if you get this building, does that cover all your aspirations? And he said, yes. He said, we've got so much work coming in, we can't do it because we have a capacity point of view. Now, that was mentioned by the economic development officers. They recommended the site to go with GTO's aspirations for the future as well. So it's not just a report they wrote, it's things like that. I've got no problems with it going to the National close work unit. Let them decide is my point.
Okay, John, you want to come back?
Yes, please. Well, I think people are making clear how they're going to vote, so I guess it's going to be me. It's going to fall to. My view is that I personally would like to urge, and I know you will say we're looking at this application here, but I would urge the client to withdraw this application and work closer with the officers to reduce the size of it. It is Greenbelt. We cannot pick and choose what we have in our Greenbelt. We need to apply constant and uniform rules if we wish to keep our Greenbelt. That piece of Greenbelt, there are arguments that it is a bit scruffy, but I would say that part of the reason that it looks like that is because in the past, way back in the past, we haven't always applied uniform rules. I do not think we can pick and choose in this case, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to say, I'm going to have to support the officers.
All right. Just to try and a couple of other points on here. The distinct impression I've got from discussing this with officers at the site visit and subsequently is that the officers acknowledge GTO wishes to grow. But I think I would summarise the impression I've got that this is too much growth too soon, and that a more modest proposal would be more acceptable. Would that be a reasonable? Obviously, no one's saying what that is because we don't know what is acceptable to them and what is acceptable to you. But I think the current argument is that 2,000 square metres, which is equivalent to 20 reasonable sized houses, is not something we'd ever normally tolerate in Greenbelt. So, Bob, I think, Claire, did you want to add a bit on the Greenbelt, and then we'll put it to Bob to make the proposal and see if there's support for that.
Chairman, I think I'd just like to clarify. Sorry, it is the last. But I'd just like to clarify a few points. Listen to what members have been discussing and their issues and their concerns. In terms of Greenbelt is probably the most fundamental policy upon which the British planning system is founded. I know that's kind of going back many years, but the principles are set out and they've been reinforced through policy into the current day. And as we know, just to comment on that, in very recent past, there's a complete deregulation of the planning system taking place in a kind of cumulative way. But Greenbelt policy is the one policy that government has continuously supported in terms of its approach. And the policy in the NPPF, and I've actually got it here, is very clear. And it talks about purposes, and one of the purposes is about openness. It's not about accessibility. It's not about the visual appearance in terms of whether or not it's scruffy, whether or not it could do with a little bit of a tidy up. It's about openness, volume, built form, spread of development. And so I think we need to really take that into consideration when we're looking at the overall impact of development on the Greenbelt. It also talks about inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, and it talks about the construction of new buildings are, by definition, inappropriate to the Greenbelt, and it talks about the exceptions to that. And one of the exceptions, and I'll accept it's been raised already, is the complete redevelopment of previously developed sites. That's why, in principle, this site is suitable for redevelopment for a commercial use. It's an existing brownfield site, if you like. It's got a commercial established use. What is very concerning is the overall increase in volume over and above what's there at the moment. So it's not a redevelopment per se, it's a redevelopment and an extension. and a significant extension of that. Now, I just wanted to explain to members the policy approach that we've taken in the Greenbelt, in particular in relation to residential dwellings. And that is one of limited extension to accommodate need. And we normally draw the line around 35%, and that's been supported consistently through the appeal process. And through all of the appeals that we've had now. And in actual fact, the issue about openness as well is interesting because we've also, nationally around the country, sites that have been underground that have increased volume and don't actually have any visual impact have been refused in principle in Greenbelt. So I think, that these are all issues that we need to take into account in considering this proposal. Officers have spoken to the applicant at length, and we feel that there is a capacity to incorporate, and all someone's warnings about looking at the scheme as it is before us now. But we haven't been satisfied based on the information provided that the amount of accommodation being proposed is actually necessary at this point. And as a result, we feel that the amount of accommodation, which is significant, is not justified in order to overcome or constitute special circumstances which overcome the Greenbelt argument. Okay, Joanna.
Right. Bob, I suspect you'd like to make an alternative proposal to that.
Well, I've got a couple of points to make as well. I find that the attitude that we should do a bit now and a bit later on is not satisfactory. I mean, we're forever telling applicants to do no piecemeal developments, to get it done in one hit, which is what I believe GTO want to do. I have two proposals. One I'll make first, and if, with your permission, Chairman, I'll make the second one afterwards.
Okay. Are we going to be voting on them sequentially?
Yes.
Right, okay.
The first one is, although I think I'm on a hiding to nothing here, and stating that I am a big champion of the Greenbelt. John and I, protect the Greenbelt to death, so I'm not making this decision lightly, as Claire knows. I would propose that we overturn the officer's recommendation and approve this application. For all the reasons that have been stated, I think the economic benefits, and I still find sending it elsewhere outside the borough is ludicrous, but never mind. That's my proposal.
It's a straightforward proposal to overturn the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, on economic benefits.
Because of the economic benefits
that it brings to the borough, the skill set, the government policy on high-skilled engineers.
So primarily the economic part.
Yeah, and I don't want to go to the festival unit.
No, that's fine. Rochelle, are you proposing to second that? Right. So, members, we have a proposal in front of us which is simply to overturn the officer's recommendation and go for approval of the application as it stands in front of us. If that was to succeed, clearly we will need, although it will be a conditional approval, we will need to go away and determine a series of conditions which I'm not prepared to do on the fly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first question. So we have a proposal that has been proposed by Bob and seconded by Michelle. I think members all have a clear understanding of what that is. Could you please indicate whether you're prepared to support that proposal? Right. And those against? And as you know, I have a casting vote, which I very rarely have to use, but in this case, I will be using to support the officer's recommendation in terms of policy. So that's the first one. So Bob, you had a second. So that fails.
Yeah.
You had a second proposal.
My second proposal is the application is deferred for further work.
Well, I'd be interested to know what the applicant or the applicant's agent's view is on that.
In terms of the built form suggested, obviously I've listened to what you have to say, and GTO wouldn't naturally put forward a site of that size unless it felt it needed it. In terms of the addendum, we were very clear about the space requirements that were required and what that was there for. And in terms of the development and in terms of where GTO is now moving, as an entity is growing exponentially at the moment. It has just taken on manufacturing, as Bob mentioned, it's the only one. So it is finding that it's outstripping its need very quickly. It's consolidating a number of sites, not just from this borough, but from other boroughs into this, hence why the space requirement is as such. In terms of deferral, I think that would at least give me the opportunity to talk to the applicant to see whether there is scope for change, but certainly the applicant, his advice was to try and keep the scheme at the size that it is, because it is what they have defined as what they actually need, not what they want.
Do you need to take advice?
I do, but the applicants are, unfortunately, the applicants out of the country.
Right.
I would take, I think making a decision for the applicant, I would prefer some form of deferral to allow discussions to be held, given that you are supportive of the principle, but not necessarily the volume. That will allow a little bit further discussion.
Let me take some advice on that as well. I think if we were to consider a deferral, we need to put a fairly tight timescale on it, because we have the situation with a building on site that you've erected without planning permission. It's already there, and it's not a situation I want to persist in the Greenbelt. So my suggestion would be, we know in August, is to say the end of October.
I think, I mean, just
well, I mean, we've got two ways forward. Either we, obviously, the proposal for straightforward refusal has not been successful, and based on the voting indicated, it will be, it's likely that the officer's recommendation for refusal will be supported, which then gives you, of course, two options. One is that you can set an appeal running, but that doesn't prevent you from having decided to set an appeal running, also continuing negotiations with the council to see whether you can come out and reach some common ground and bring something forward that's more acceptable to, or is, should we say, as a compromise, because inevitably it would be a compromise, because what we're suggesting is that the council does not accept the scale you're putting forward. The issue is what is that quantum as to what would be acceptable? Chris, have you got some input on this quandary?
If the purpose of the deferral is to negotiate on the size of the building, then it becomes a new planning application, surely. Therefore, we should simply support the officer's recommendation tonight and invite the applicant to submit a new planning application.
John?
I would agree with Chris on that. Purely and simply, I've sat here and watched you defer, Chairman, planning approvals in the past, which I think that if we, they tend to have been larger ones because they've come forward, but I think in this case there is a good economic reason, and there's obviously a will in this room among members, that a good proportion of members in this room, that we give this an opportunity to run again. So I would very much support a deferral.
Okay. I think we need to put a date on that, and being realistic, I think what we want to do is we'll agree to a deferral. Well, I believe we could. The indications are that I think we will probably have unanimous support for that. I'm not sure about Chris, but then that will give you the opportunity for officers to continue negotiations. But what I do want to do is I want to put a deadline on it, and I also want to authorise the control manager to, if not able to reach a conclusion by that deadline, to go ahead and refuse, based upon the indications that the committee would support a refusal if it was to be put now. Okay, people accept what we're proposing there? No, I know you don't, Chris, but it's clearly a contentious one. No, I've got to put it to the vote and everything. So just to reiterate, my proposal is
September, then at 3 months.
Okay, so I'm making a proposal that we defer a decision on this to enable the local planning authority and the applicant to see whether they can achieve a compromise arrangement, and that we want that to be achieved by the end of November, and that if it is not achieved by the end of November, instruct the head of development management to issue a refusal notice on the 1st of December.
Is that 2016?
No, that's 2015. That's 2015. Sorry. Sorry. Yes. And it would come back here for approval, so it would have to come to the November Planning Committee at the very latest, and we would need to make a decision at the November Planning Committee, because otherwise it would fall into December and be automatically refused. So that would keep everybody's attention focused on trying to achieve something that's acceptable. So I put a proposal.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
If the planning officer's recommendation is for refusal in December, would it still be coming back to this committee?
Well, because it'd be delegated.
Okay.
Just to clarify, I think it would be helpful.
Yep.
Just clarify. So it's deferred for negotiation. If an amended scheme cannot be negotiated, then it will be refused in November.
1st of December.
End of November.
Right.
If, however, a scheme which is in amended form is submitted and officers are minded to support that, then it will come back to the November committee.
Okay. Malcolm, you have...
Planning committee looks like it's the 11th of November.
Yep.
On the day. So are we having an extraordinary meeting? Or?
Nothing. 1st of December.
Well, yeah, but otherwise it's...
Right,
We'll
so
have to have a meeting before
let's not have any more. We've put a proposal. Tim, I think you were going to support that.
No, I wasn't.
You weren't going to support my proposal?
No.
That's a question. Okay. You weren't going to support my proposal for deferral?
That's right.
Right, okay. So is there another member of the... Bob is willing to support the proposal. Yes?
Sorry. I agree with what you're doing, but I don't understand it.
Okay.
There's a new planning application going to come back. Is there a new number? Yes? So what's happened to this application then? How did we determine this application?
If a new application came forward that was proposed and supported by the officers and met the applicant's requirements, automatically this proposal, as part of what I've just proposed, will be refused on the 1st of December regardless.
Okay,
So
I'm
we'll
fully
follow
aware of that procedure.
Right, okay. So is somebody willing to support my proposal? Right, okay. So I'm now putting that to the vote. All those who would like to support that proposal, please put forward. And that is carried by all except Tim. Tim, you're going to go against. Right, so you have a decision through a rather convoluted method. I think what you've got is better than a straight refusal, which I think is what the alternative would have been. I genuinely hope that all the parties can work together to try and come up with something that's an appropriate solution. So thank you, members and everybody, for your forbearance. We now move on to the last item on the agenda. So the last item on the agenda is the application of 4 Frogwell Drive. And David McGuire, the planning officer, is going to take us through this one. We also, I think most members of the committee attended a site visit on Friday morning, and we looked at the subject site from the site itself, and also from the neighbouring objectors' garden as well. So straight across to you, David.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so the proposal is a house order application for the proposed erection of a 2-storey side/rear, single-storey rear and front extensions to include a new front entrance porch and internal alterations. Okay, so we have a site location plan. The application property is sited to the south of London Road and to the east of Frog Hall Drive. It shares boundaries to the north with number 2, and to the south with number 6 and number 219 London Road to the rear of the property. This is the application property. The application property consists of a 2-storey detached dwelling built in the 1950s as part of a development along Frog Hall Drive. The site benefits from substantial amenity space, an integral garage, a Scots pine tree within the forecourt, court, or which is subject to a TPO. Okay. Just before I continue, just some background on this application. The application is a resubmission of a scheme previously withdrawn by the applicant. It is noted that this was due to insufficient information being supplied at the time for the local authority to adequately assess the impact on a protected species, i.e. bats. A bat emergence and re-entry survey has since been submitted with the current application. So I'll continue on. Okay, I have highlighted the area there in the shading, which will be the increase in floor space. To the north flank, this side here, will be the two-storey component. It will be set back 4.2 metres from the building line. It will allow at minimum a separation distance to the north boundary 1.2 metres. The two-storey element will be set down from the ridge of the host dwelling by 1 metre. The two-storey element continuing on will wrap around the flank and be a part two-storey, part single-storey rear extension. The projection of both the single-storey rear and two-storey projection will be 4 metres max, and such complies with the guidelines within the Borough Design Guide. Okay. So that's just the floor plans there, which basically repeats what I've said. Shows the projections there to the rear, and then this side is the first floor addition. So it's primarily that first floor will be towards the north flank of the property. And that is the existing floor plans. I'll move on. Okay, so in accordance with the Borough Design Guide, alterations or extensions should be clearly subservient to the form and scale of the original building in most situations. So just to recap on what I've said, that's the 1 metre set down, 4 metres, it's probably best seen by this side, 4 metres rear extension, first floor and ground floor as well. Okay. So moving on, I'll look at the impact on the amenities of neighbouring properties. To the north flank as well, the first floor window will be omitted. 2 ground floor windows will be included to the north flank. These will be of obscure glaze and will serve utility and WC. It's also 2 windows will be included on the south flank as well. Towards the rear of the property, additional windows will be included. These are considered to share similar views, alike the windows that are there as present. It is noted that there is a degree of overlooking, albeit that is obscure and common within the residential setting and common within the setting such as Frogcourt Drive. Alright, so move back up to the block plan. Again, I've included the shading and also included that 45-degree line of sight for the BRE guidelines. Just to touch on the separation distances from number 2 to number 4. This would be 7 metres approximately and 11 metres first floor flank to flank. So just to give you an idea of the separation distance. There's also a approximately 1.8 metre boundary treatment and also mature vegetation along the boundary as well. No windows will be infringed in accordance with that 45-degree. There is a slight infringement to the conservatory. However, this will still remain to benefit from a source of light from both the east and from the west. It's considered with regards to the loss of light as well that it also reduces the impact given the hip nature as well of the design in terms of the roof form. I can go back on that should you wish. That's just an idea of the relationship as exists in share between the 2 properties. Again, 7 metres and 10 metres at first floor. In accordance then with those separation distances, the Borough Design Guide advises that there's a 1 metre separation distance that's usually to mitigate against a terracing effect. In this case, it's not considered that that would in any case be likely. Given the separation distances again, it's and the boundary treatments, mature vegetation screening, and the hip nature of the roof form, it's considered that no overbearing impacts
would warrant a reason for refusal in this instance. That's just the view from the rear of the application site. Again, from the street scene, you can see the actual design appearance varies between number 2 and number 4. Further on down the street scene, there is quite a balanced character. A number of properties have had similar extensions to that of the application property, specifically the 2-storey elements. It's evident on number 6, and indeed front single-storey extension as well is also evident on number 6. I should have moved on a bit quicker there, but that is number 6, set of subject property, and there is an example of the extension, first floor side extension. That is substantially set back as well, and just to recap, the setback of the first floor extension or 2-storey side extension as proposed would be 4.2 metres, well in advance of the 1 metre as advised per the Borough Design Guide. That is another property, number 3, just across the road. Again, one of many properties which do have a similar style extension. That is a tree protection plan. It's just to cover that the Scots pine tree will be adequately, no impacts will occur on that Scots pine tree that has the TPO status. That is subject to condition as well. In the event of approval, we would recommend that. It's recommended that the planning committee authorises the head of development to grant planning permission subject to conditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. A couple of speakers registered. Firstly, could I call Jonathan Gilby on behalf of number 2 Cockhall. Good evening. If you press the grey button,
okay,
we can hear you speak.
Okay. Thank you. I'm here speaking on behalf of my mother, who's the resident of number 2. A couple of points I probably need before 3 minutes. First, I'd like to make a point to say that it was very disappointing that the applicant never engaged my mother on trying to find a sensible solution as to this application and discuss it with her. We believe there is a workable solution, but unfortunately we weren't able to discuss that with them. We believe there is an overdevelopment of the plot. The application is for a very large extension, which in our opinion would constitute a considerable overdevelopment of the building, bringing into question whether the extension is subservient to the form and scale of the original building. The proposed north extension shows a large overdevelopment, a long gabled wall which will run along the boundary line, which will be significant, approximately 5 metres high to gutter level, and it's even very close. I said 1.2, we believe it to be 1 metre, but we believe it to be excessive. The flank wall will impose a serious view of excessive bulk and scales to be seen from the adjacent property, which is my mother's, and the shadowing obviously extend far longer into these dimensions. We believe there would be loss of light and overshadowing. Excessive bulk of the proposed extension immediately adjacent to the boundary with the property at number 2 would undoubtedly cause a serious loss of light shadowing to the property. I think it's all the properties in Frockle Drive really follow the same type of plot. They work front to back. My mother's property is different. It's one of the original ones on the plot, and the plot is the house in the middle of the plot. So where other houses have been extended, there has been no impact on the neighbours because they all run front to back, as number 6 has. Whereas number 2 is slightly different. It is in the middle of the plot. My mother lives on the right-hand side with regard to the conservatory and the patio. The excessive wall is going to run significantly further down the plot of number 4 and very high at 5 metres. From that sake, it will impact from the light, A, from the bulk and shadow, but also the enjoyment of my mother in the property that she uses. We do believe there's a sensible solution, but as I said before, we're able to discuss it with the applicant. So that's really it. Okay.
Thank you very much. Could I call Craig Laurie, the applicant?
Good evening. So I think I've got a presentation here just to take you guys through. So it's regrettable.
Just hang on. Presentation.
That's the one that I read off.
Foundation, that one there.
So that's the one. Oh, sorry.
Slideshow.
F5.
So, when conceiving the design for the house, I reviewed about 30 other applications in the neighbourhood. So, along Frockwell Drive, Priest Avenue, Tudor Close, and surrounding roads, there's a lot of 1950s buildings that have all had sort of similar extensions. So, I reviewed about 30 of them, and all of them have a common theme, which is that they locate the second story extension when you want one behind the garage in that space. To locate it on the other side of the building behind the existing bedroom, it essentially negates the ability to have another bedroom in there, because you basically have two long bedrooms you walk through. So it's a design that works with the existing layout of the house. It's unfortunate that it will impact to a small degree the neighbours at number 2, but it's really the only choice available to us. So if we go on to the next slide. Testament to just how many properties that have been extended in this way. There are over 50 properties in the surrounding area. So along Frockwell Drive, there are 10 properties that have had double-storey extensions behind the garage. There are 32 on Priest Avenue, and there are 9 on Tudor Close, and that actually represents over 50% of the houses of the same design of our house that have been extended and approved in that way. And I think Mr. McGuire already showed this earlier, but the numbers number 6 and number 8 and number 10 and number 3 and number 9 in the surrounding area all have double-storey extensions. So in terms of keeping with the neighbourhood, it's almost the case that we're out of keeping in terms of the where we currently are. To add a second-storey extension would actually bring us up to date with one of the other houses. And then just to kind of highlight this, so if we look at Priest Avenue on the left, this is just a shot from Google. It shows 4 properties in a row with double-storey extensions behind the garage, and a couple of which also have conservatories to the right-hand side of those extensions. So in terms of a sort of an overbearing and a shadowing impact, those extensions are already kind of in place there and have been approved. And on the right-hand side, you can see on Frockwell Drive, there are 3 properties, again, one after the other, with double-storey extensions behind the garage, again, some of which have conservatories, significantly closer than
Mr. Laurie,
number 2.
I noticed you've got quite a few slides, you've only got half a minute left.
That's fine, I've got one.
Oh, okay, fine. Sure, I thought there were a couple.
Okay. And then the final slide is, essentially, I don't believe the orientation will take away significant light from the neighbours, so it is a long distance from number 2. You've also got a willow tree in our garden and tall trees down the bottom of the garden. So in terms of shadowing from the light coming up, that already shades to a certain degree. So they're not going to be significantly higher than those trees. So in summary, I guess we're just looking to develop the property for our family, for our own family, and that's it.
Thank you very much. Now, we don't have a local ward member, so just straight across to hear from the other members. Malcolm, I'll come to you first.
It's in my ward, but it's about 300 yards away from where I live. I know the area fairly well. There are indeed several other houses in that road which have identical extensions on them. And in fact, number 2 is a very large site in the house anyway. And so it would seem rather unfair that all the other people can have the extensions, but because you're next to a larger house which enjoys currently a large garden, that you should not be able to have the same extension as other houses in the road. That would seem unfair. The other thing is that the actual brick part of the house in number 2 is quite a way away, obviously, so any light thing is likely to affect only generally the conservatory part of it. And one imagines most people live in the main house for the majority of the time, rather than the conservatory part. So basically, I don't think there's likely to be much in the way of overlooking. There's a lot of greenery down that road between the houses and at the back of it. So I think it's likely to shield quite a bit of the visibility of being overbearing at all. I don't think it will be overbearing, and I think it's a perfectly sensible extension.
Thank you. Bob?
Maybe 2 questions I have. First of all, looking at the view from number 2 that David put up, it looks as though the resident of number 2 is going to be looking at a great brick wall without any features in it at all. It's going to be a completely flat brick wall. And the other point is about the loss of light into the conservatory. I mean, I'd live in a conservatory most year round if I had one. But the loss of light, I mean, you've got trees shading at one side, you're going to have a building shading at the other side. You are going to definitely lose a bit of light, so I'd like some comment and guidance on those points, please.
Okay. David, would you like to comment on those?
Yes, certainly. There is undoubtedly going to be some loss of light. It's establishing if that loss of light amounts to significant planning harm that would be to the detriment of the occupants of that property. Whilst I'm not disputing that, there most certainly will be a degree of light lost. In accordance with the BRE guidance, there would be a slight infringement. I would maintain the view that conservatory would benefit from a substantial amount of light from both the east and west, and given the hip nature of that roof as well, I think that will alleviate your concerns with regards to the loss of light, hopefully. Still struggling with the F5 button, unfortunately.
David, the other thing I just want to clarify is when we looked at the site from the objector's garden number 2, there's a substantial amount of vegetation along that boundary. That's within number 2's boundary, if I recall correctly.
Yes,
it's
indeed,
within,
yeah.
Totally within their control.
Yeah.
If they wish to maintain boundary treatment in that way.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Okay. All right. Just a couple other points. I note the comment from the objector that there was no attempt to discuss or engage alternatives. I would just remind the committee that our role is to consider what's put before us, and we have to determine those rather than suggest alternatives. Could you just confirm, with the exception of this slight infringement on the light on the conservatory, that is fully policy compliant other than that?
Yes, I confirm that's correct, Chairman.
Any other members wish to speak? Right, members, we have a clear recommendation from the officers, and we have the benefit of the site visit. We've listened to the views of the objector and the applicant and heard their relative arguments for that. So could you please indicate that you're prepared to support the officer's recommendation? And that is unanimously supported by the officers, so that planning application is approved. That is the end of the planning applications we have for consideration, but we have a couple of other matters to resolve.